How you guys doing? Dark Knight Radio. I'm Dark Knight, and for this story, I just wanted to jump in. A story I read online. It's a kind of a touchy story. It kind of got me full a little bit. So I'm just gonna jump right in. This story is told from the mother. So let me jump into it. I'm a 41-year-old mother. A single. I was a single parent, and I stayed in an apartment in downtown Baltimore with my 11-year-old son. And me and my son had a good relationship, even though I was absent because I worked two jobs, and most of the time I never got to really see him. Only had about 2 or 3 hours to help him with his homework, and most of the time I tried to get him in extracurricular activities or try to get his father to help me with some of the load of watching him. So if something would go on, I would be the last to know due to my job or my working. And most of the time I was so tired I never paid attention to the small details that came back to haunt me several months later. So, my kid, who was in middle school, I noticed that he was always a happy child. You know, from the ages from 6 to 11, you couldn't keep a smile off of his face. He attended school, he had friends. He stayed smiling, stayed dancing. He loved music. Every morning before he went to school, he played his favorite song. And when he came home, he would always want to watch his favorite movie. He was a straight A student, and he was very talkative. He gave me no trouble. Yes, he was energetic, and yes, he occupied all my time, but was a great kid. Once he graduated and went to the, he was skipped because his grades were so good. And once he got into an advanced, grade in advanced class, I noticed that, the energy part of my son would leave. Um, but due to my working, and I don't want to use this as an excuse, but due to my working, I never took the time to ask him what was wrong. I never took the time to sit him down or to ask why his energy diminished over time. He would come home, and I remember, and this it haunts me so much that he went from a smiling kid to head was always in the air to a frowning kid, and he always held his head down the last month or so before he left. Come to turns out, my son was being bullied, and after the event happened, I was told by student polices, friends of his, in which decreased over time, and several counselors and the principal of the school told me exactly what happened. They said on several times my son was pantsed, several times he was stuffed in lockers, several times his head was mushed into lockers. His shoes were stolen, his pants were stolen, and at several times he would be on the receiving end of a 3 to 4 kid beating after school. After finding this out, I used to wonder why he never called me to tell me about what happened or called me to tell him my son was being bullied. They said my son never wanted to go back to class. It was several moments where his friends would actually turn on him. So he didn't have any friends at the time of what took place. He didn't want to go to any after school programs. He didn't want to go to school. And I remember him saying the last month or so how he was never feeling good. He was always sick. My son never told me that he was getting bullied, but I knew something was wrong. And I should have took that motherly intuition and found out and been a better parent. Right now, I'm writing this story crying because I would have stepped in or did something or was a better parent instead of being selfish. I could have, acknowledged the signs. One day, and it was so spooky because it was the only day that I called off of work. My son, the whole entire week, said the exact same thing. I don't feel good. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to go home. And it was strange he would say he wanted to go home when he was already at home. It would be after school. I started to notice that the left eye on my son's face was black, and I asked him what happened. He told me that the kids at school was horsing around, and he made a mistake and was hit. Now my son never lied to me, so I never took anything what he said. I was never skeptical about what he told me. Wow. So during this time, if he had never came to me and told me, I would take it as law and take him at his word for it. But I can never forget how the tone and the look in his eyes when he said he wanted to go home. And when he said that, it brought chills and goosebumps all over me. One day, I was at work and I get a call from my neighbor saying there were gunshots, but a single gunshot, either behind her house or in front of her house. Now, supposedly, this was the time my son was supposed to be in school. Come to find out, he didn't go to school. He skipped class. The police called me, and my neighbor called me and told me there was an emergency. I need to come to the house because that's where they heard a gunshot. When I get there, there's an ambulance and cops surrounding my house and my neighbor's house, and I had to look in the ambulance and see my son there, and ambulance is trying to revive him. Wow. Turns out my son had shot himself in the head and tried to commit suicide. Well, he did commit suicide. As I'm watching the ambulance, I'm watching the black, I guess the body bags. The only thing I can remember was him saying I wanted to go home. Seeing my son in the morgue and for them asking me to recognize him or to make sure it was him, I was numb. I didn't want to breathe. I didn't want to be here anymore. Because I knew if I was a better parent, or if I would have asked him, if I would have just held him and told him everything would be okay if you just tell me what's going on, I would have tried my best to, take him out of school or go to school and address the problem, rectify the problem. At that point, the only thing I cared about was working. I just thought I needed to work. Now it seems like that the work was irrelevant because now I have no son to work for. The funeral was hard. It was a closed casket. I don't know how my son got a hold to a gun. It was speculation believed that one of his friends at school gave it to him because he told him he wanted to protect himself against a bully. But in all actuality, my son just wanted to escape and leave and indeed fact go home. It was a closed casket because during the shooting, half my son's face was off. And I just remember saying to myself, it's going to be hard for him to smile with his face that way. Wow, I can't believe she was actually thinking about that at that time. Right now, I'm telling every parent that bullying is serious and it shouldn't be condoned nor tolerated. I don't have a son because of bullying, and it broke him. He was too young and too happy of a kid to ever experience that. He will never know the joys that life has to bring because of intolerance and ignorance surrounded by his area and his environment. I don't have a child because of bullying. Bullying took my son. Even though I partly blame myself also for not being a better parent, it's indeed fact that I can't apologize enough, that I can't hate myself enough. So everybody, if you're a parent, I'm imploring you to please, if you sense anything with your children, listen and become better parents. Understand that in today's age, it's very, very hard to raise a child. And that was particular. I think that was the end of the story she ran. This is a tough one, man. This is a tough one. Wow. I never liked bullies. Um, I didn't never tolerate. I was never a I never tolerated bullying because of this. Bullying the weak is a cowardice act in and of itself. There are some people who would kill bullies. You gang up on someone smaller, weaker than you with two or three people, and you beguile and you talk about and you be mean. It doesn't make you look cool. It doesn't make you look strong. It makes you look weaker. As a matter of fact, this kid took his life because he couldn't understand. He didn't grow up with a father, from what I'm gathering. He didn't know how to defend himself. He didn't know how to act, or he didn't know how to get people off him. The only thing he knew was he was happy, and there was something blocking. It was a problem he couldn't solve. He was a 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid. There was no man that's like to say, this happens, do this, or that happens, do that. And that's all he knew. He wanted to escape. He couldn't deal with those feelings. Could his mother's been better? Yes. Yes and no. She wanted to provide. And, she worked and she was tired, But having a kid is a full-time job itself. So I can't say just her working. I mean, if you have a kid, you have to put all your time and energy in that kid. I'm not bashing her, but she don't have a son because of it. Like she even said, the working was irrelevant because she don't have a son to work for. And this is a sad story, man. I didn't feel good reading it. I damn sure don't feel good telling it, but I feel like something need to be told. A story I want to give to the family, to you guys. Post your comments down below. Tell me how you feel about this one, man. This one was a tough one. It's Dark Knight Radio. You guys be good. Be safe.